Today we're going to be looking at a pair of relatively unique, oversized models, the Bugaboo Donkey3 and the brand new Cybex Gazelle. What makes these models interesting to compare in my mind is the transformability from a two-child mode to a mono configuration, with extra space specifically dedicated to improving storage capacity. There are plenty of transformable two-child models out there on the market, and even other models that have side basket options as extra accessories. But with these two models, the storage mode is not just the result of such extra accessories, but is rather an integral part of how the models have been designed in the first place. So let's have a look then, starting with the Donkey3. It's a bit hard to give exact weights and measurements for either of these models, since they depend on which configuration you're using. But to give you a basic idea, the Donkey3 weighs roughly 15 kilos in its mono form, and folded down as compactly as possible, measures 91 by 60 by 24 centimeters. It can take up to 22 kilos per seat, and 28 kilos in the underslung shopping basket. We'll start off as usual then by taking a look at the Donkey3 seats, and as both a reversible seat and a side-by-side model, it's important to note that the seat frames are a tad narrower, though not shorter, than one would find on a regular mid-sized or tandem model. This isn't a problem with the bassinets, but it does limit the effective age span of the Donkey3's seats to around 3 years old for maximum comfort. Beyond their narrower dimensions, the Donkey3 seats follow very closely to the design canon Bugaboo has always used for their mainline models, and both the seat and bassinet are included with purchase, attachable to the same frame. The textiles, harness, padding, and overall feel of the seats are pretty standard for Bugaboo, emphasizing both fine craftsmanship as well as subtle efforts made to improve how intuitive they feel to use. The seats are of the bucket variety, meaning that the back and leg rests are not adjustable with relation to the baseboard, but the frames do have multiple positions of recline, ranging from a position where the frame, though not quite the seat back, is fully flat, to a nearly full upright position. As far as the canopies are concerned, the Donkey3 provides good sun coverage due to the standard extra extendable portions zipped into the rear of the canopies. When it comes to parent comfort and ease of functionality, the Donkey3 has several things going for it. First and foremost being just the awesome accessibility one has to one's children when using a side-by-side reversible seat model, of which there are very few on the market, by the way. In addition, there are quite a few possible configurations with the Donkey3, between seats, bassinets, and car seats, so you can tailor both sides of the stroller to fit the changing needs of either child. And on top of this is, of course, the somewhat narrower storage or shopping mono mode for those periods of age difference when you only need stroller for one child. And as far as folding goes, if you have the need or the trunk space, all of these options are compatible with the Donkey3's one-piece fold as well. While conversely, if space is an issue, the model can be disassembled, contracted, and folded quite small relative to its size, if one has the time to go through the necessary procedures. There are quite a few activation mechanisms on the Donkey3, needed to allow for all of its functions and configurations, but these are all accomplished in a pretty intuitive manner, and are designed with an aesthetic of simplicity and sturdiness not always found on Bugaboo models. Lastly, in addition to these use characteristics that I mentioned, there are many other awesome elements involved with the Donkey3's functionality related to its structure and driving abilities, which I'll cover in the next few sections. Alright, let's move on to have a quick look at the mechanics and the overall longevity of the Donkey3, where there are both positive and negative factors. The positive side is that, for what it is, the Donkey3 is quite strongly built. Like its now discontinued sister model, the Buffalo, the Donkey3 is constructed in larger than average, sturdier proportions, has one of the best central folding mechanisms that Bugaboo has ever designed, and also has an excellent brake system, wheels, and wheel mountings. On the negative side, however, what the Donkey3 is designed to do in the first place has a direct effect on limiting the model's longevity, unfortunately. There are two elements to this. First being that the telescopic horizontal expansion points, used to switch between the mono and twin forms, loosen over time, and second being the combination of Bugaboo's emphasis on lightweight materials with the Donkey3's immense weight capacity and strong terrain capabilities. Combined then, in my experience, and we've been repairing donkeys for many years now, these negative factors mean that a pretty significant general loosening of the chassis is unavoidable, regardless of how well you treat the model. And, if you treat it badly, there are areas that will break eventually, just as a result of wear, even without actual accidents. For these reasons, if you decide to go for the Donkey3, we recommend watching our standalone review for the model, as well as our separate video discussing these longevity issues specifically and offering tips on how best to maintain the model. Okay, let's finish off the Donkey3 by talking about how it drives. As a side-by-side as opposed to a tandem model, the Donkey3 has a wide footprint and good weight distribution, making it feel both very stable and highly maneuverable. And despite a lot of worries about it being too wide, please note that the Donkey3 falls within the standard measurements for most doorways. With regards to its terrain capabilities, the Donkey3 can also handle real rough off-road conditions. The mechanical elements involved here, other than the model's general shape, are an excellent feeling of suspension, despite there actually being no dedicated rear frame suspension and instead resulting from the build of the central bar. The model's larger than average front wheels with a raised ridge to reduce friction and mitigate wear, extra suspension pads built into the front wheel housings, and lastly, the cumulative effect of the lighter weight materials with which the entire model is constructed. Okay, let's move on to the Gazelle then, beginning with some stats. The Gazelle clocks in at 12.5 kilos in its monoform and folds down to 56 by 32 by 74.5 centimeters in its most compact configuration. It can take 22.6 kilos of weight per seat and 13 kilos in the underslung shopping basket. Note again though that as with the Donkey3, folded size and overall weight for the Gazelle are dependent on how you configure the model. As far as the seats are concerned, the Gazelle's seats are roughly 5 centimeters wider than the Donkey3's, but are also about 10 centimeters shorter in overall length, and are thus more or less equivalent with regards to age span, being likely to feel cramped after 3 years old or so. Note that unlike with a lot of tandem models, the Gazelle uses only one size for its seats, rather than having a larger full-size primary seat and a smaller tandem seat. The Gazelle's seats are built on Cybex's Lux design and are not rigid frame bucket seats, but rather are highly foldable, with both an adjustable backboard and leg rest, and are thus capable of lying fully flat. While there are definitely positive elements to this in terms of child comfort, the downsides are that the Gazelle's seats are a bit looser and more fragile, and also that bassinet options for newborns need to be purchased separately. As far as the textile quality, harness, padding, and canopy are concerned, the Gazelle falls a good step below the Donkey3, in accordance with the model's gold line as opposed to platinum line placing in Cybex's self-imposed product hierarchy. It's not that these elements aren't okay, they're usable, but they definitely feel cheaply made, especially in comparison to Bugaboo standards for such things. As far as parent comfort and ease of use are concerned, I would say that the overall feeling of the model is that of a long, sturdy, solid chassis core with somewhat loose, rattly elements attached to it, in particular the seat, sliding adapters, and the rear wheels. As far as folding is concerned, the Gazelle is a little easier to fold down than the Donkey3, not in the activation mechanisms involved, but simply because it can be made into a more compact package using fewer steps than are necessary with the Donkey3. When it comes to the various configurations of the Gazelle, my general judgment is sort of like that saying, jack of all trades, master of none. And though the model is built off a basic tandem concept, actually ripping off a lot from the Upper Baby Vista, with the Gazelle, the real advantages of that initial concept have been stripped away to allow for extra setups. Unfortunately though, to me, all of the model's setups wind up being a bit subpar in some way, thwarted either by not having an average size seat in the one-child configuration, by the effects that the model's quite long chassis and front-loaded weight distribution have on driving in the two-child or shopping configurations, as well as just by the way that lower frontal positioning of the seat makes your child so inaccessible in such configurations. This last bit is one of the biggest differences between the Gazelle and the Donkey3 for parent comfort in my opinion. As with the Donkey3, your child is right there, safely elevated from the ground and easily accessible on the go, while with the Gazelle, you'll have to stop every few minutes if your child is having a bad day. When it comes to longevity, there are pluses and minuses with the Gazelle versus the Donkey3. Just looking at the core and the central lower elements of the folding mechanism, the Gazelle is built a bit simpler and is pretty structurally sound, both as a result of having fewer small internal components, as well as by not being prone to the sort of horizontal looseness that the Donkey3 is as a result of its telescopic extension mechanisms. On the other hand though, the upper activation elements of the fold are weaker than the Donkey3, and the slamming motion used to facilitate the fold puts added strain on the system. The model is quite long and front-loaded, which puts added stress on the connection points when maneuvering the model. And lastly, all the elements attached to the chassis core are built a bit weaker than on the Donkey3, the seats, wheels, brake system, and so on. That being said though, there is one way in which the Gazelle might still win out in terms of longevity, and that is that, despite having arguably better suspension mechanisms, it's impossible to drive the model over even close to the sort of terrain that one can take the Donkey3 over, and for that reason, this limitation in use is likely to keep the model away from a lot of the sort of wear that the Donkey3 usually has to tolerate. And that brings us right into our last section concerning the Gazelle, which is its drivability. And as I just said, despite its decent suspension and front wheels that, though they are significantly smaller than the Donkey3, aren't horribly small in relation to the wider market, the Gazelle really just sort of falls short in the easy driving department for two main reasons. Firstly, because of that longer than average chassis length, which makes maneuvering somewhat cumbersome, and secondly, because two of its three configurations have that low forward seat position, which makes the model very front heavy and makes tipping the model backwards, as one needs to do for example when going up a curb, very heavy to accomplish. Note that these problems do not necessarily affect off-road use in particular. The Gazelle can handle cobblestones and gravel and so on just fine, but rather affects general maneuverability, especially on the upward incline, as well as making it harder to negotiate larger vertical obstacles, again, like curbs. So which of these would I recommend buying? Despite the lower price tag, I have to be honest, I have trouble really finding a useful placing for the Gazelle in the larger scheme of things, primarily because without a larger main seat and better maneuvering, the only real value it seems to offer is in being a narrower two-child model for children with a tight age span. While the Bugaboo Donkey3, by contrast, despite its propensity to wear down a bit too fast if not treated right, is the most functionally useful two-child stroller or mono shopping model that I've ever used. In any case, we hope you found this video interesting, and if you did, we ask that you subscribe, as it helps us to continue making videos in the future. In addition, if you are currently shopping for a stroller, we have a buyer's guide on our Patreon page which lists a wide range of models that we recommend, with a lot of technical and lifestyle related information. You can find it by following the link in the description. Thank you.